3-day weekend here. A lot of movies coming out this weekend too. We got three new wide releases, I believe, this weekend. Next week. This is kind of like the unofficial start to the summer movie season. Furiosa, Mad Max Saga, one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Cannot wait to chat about that next week. The movie we're going to be talking about today, though, however, it's been out for a couple of weeks. Catherine and I were in Cleveland when it came out, so it was a little bit late for us seeing it. So just caught this last weekend. You guys are going to have to correct me or put a coin in a jar or something, because for whatever fucking reason, I keep calling Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes Escape from the Planet of the Apes. I don't know why. Escape from the Planet of the Apes was one of the original movies that I've seen. But for whatever reason, I want to call this movie Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And
Escape
I did
from New
that.
York.
I don't know why I want to do it. And I did it. So it's so bad. It's so bad that when I sent the title and the scroll for Joe to put on YouTube, I noticed it. And it was funny because Catherine, she's like, what are you guys talking about today? I said Escape from the Planet of the Apes. She's like, you mean Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? And I go, shit, I probably screwed up the title in the scroll. And sure enough, I did. I don't know what it is, but correct me or let it roll or put a coin in a jar every time I call Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes Escape from the Planet of the Apes. It's a totally different, like, it's a verb instead of a noun, and it's a totally different preposition. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. But anyway, so that's that. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is our review today, not the 1971 movie. And then we're also going to be talking about a little slight on news, but we're going to be talking about the Friday the 13th franchise getting a complete makeover / new universe, because why make one good movie when you can screw up 6? So we're going to talk about that coming up to end the show. I guarantee you Dom's got some thoughts, even though he's not. I guess I wouldn't peg you as a Friday the 13th fan. Would I be correct in my assumption?
No, not really.
Indeed, but I know you got some thoughts on it, so we will chat on that coming up here, second half of the show. First things first, Joe's all ready to go with that background, too, with a little Donkey Kong action for the background here for the Planet of the Apes review. How are you, Joe? How's life post-graduation?
So this is week 2 post-graduation. I was just telling the guys in the green room, time is going by so slowly for me right now. I don't know what to do with my free time. I thought I would have stuff to do. I originally, my plans were to play softball this summer, but me and my friends, we missed the deadline to register, so we have to wait till the fall now to start our softball league, which will be nice because then it'll be softball. Football season will start too, and I can start my fantasy football group that I always do, so that will keep me busy. But in terms of summer, yeah, man, I have no idea like what to do with my free time.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Remembrance for you as well. 3-day weekend for most of us. Can't go wrong with something like that too. Kind of the official kickoff of summer. So hopefully first few days of the unofficial start to summer are doing you well. We come to you live on Wednesday as the gruesome twosome. No Dom today, no Dominic Guanzon, but the two of us will tackle two major topics in film. By our lonesome, and I believe in us. This is not our first rodeo together, Joe. This is not our first rodeo doing this show together. I think we'll be all right, though. We will miss our good buddy Dominic, no less. We are tackling Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, a film not enough people saw this weekend, disappointingly so. That's a whole other topic of conversation I'm going to try not to veer into, or else I'm going to get pissed, and I don't want to get pissed talking about this movie. And then we're also going to talk about, normally we start the show with an in memoriam section or subject if somebody dies, but I think I have too much to say about this person who was part of my love for documentaries too. I have too much to say about this person to devote like 10 minutes to it. And I think that his catalog, I don't think people realize how colorful of a catalog documentarian Morgan Spurlock, who passed away at the age of 53 from cancer last week, really had. Everybody knows him as the Super Size Me guy. He was like, it's like you start your career with Crank That Soldier Boy. You're going to be forever known as something that big, that monumental, and that transformative. Oscar-nominated documentary. And I think the second thing that he's probably most known for has got to be that FX show, 30 Days, which I don't know if you've ever watched that show. That was a fascinating show back in the day. I've seen some episodes. I don't know if you've ever watched it. They don't air it anymore on TV. I don't even know if it's streaming anywhere. Might be on Amazon, but a lot to say clearly about Morgan Spurlock passing, at least on my end. So I'll be interested in what your thoughts too are, Joe, because I'm not going to lie, shocked the shit out of me. It's been a minute since a celebrity death shocked me. And I saw him trending on Twitter and I clicked on it and I was like, what the fuck? Like, it's been a while. A lot of the deaths recent. I mean, Toby Keith was more sad than it was shocking for me. I guess Jimmy Buffett was a little shocking, but he wasn't really young. 53 is way too young. Like, that was another thing about that. But we're going to talk Morgan Spurlock, too, after the show as well. So, and then we got Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. So, loaded show on Sleepless today. Again, gruesome twosome tackling it. Joe, big question. How are you?
I'm doing good. You saying, like, it is the end of May, the last show of May, it made me realize, like, holy shit, like, May, for me at least, has felt like it's been going on forever now. That could be because I was in the process of graduating and I was handling that, and then now I'm post-graduation, and time feels like it's going by so slow as I look to find something career-wise worth my degree. So it's been feeling like forever now. It's just a long month in general, too, I think, usually. I always felt that way about May whenever it comes around. Which is good because, it's warmer weather here. Actually, in Illinois, it's been warmer, but it's also been raining a ton. And we have our cicada problem that's going on and everything.
Stormy as shit.
It really is.
Stormy as shit the last couple of days.
I honestly don't know why. Sorry, I was just taking a sip of water. But overall, I mean, I'm good. I'm ready to talk about both topics for the show. Both I'm, interested to see what you have to say. Especially, our Furiosa review. Because over the weekend, I saw a lot of hot reactions about the box office, the film overall, everything. So I feel like it'll be just good to talk positively about the film. Because even though what I've been seeing online has been in a positive way of you should go see this movie, it's been led by mostly frustration and anger towards a very specific group of people online. Well, two groups of people online.
Yeah, I don't want to talk the box office performance, even though I feel like it's almost inevitable because that's where the discourse has been headed really since Friday night when it was revealed. I think Mendelsohn was the one who broke it. Friday night, Saturday morning, really, how he was saying this is going to really underperform
Yeah.
expectations. This is not a cheap movie either. And this is the kind of movie that's legs is a little suspect. Um, we'll dive into it though. Furiosa Mad Max Saga. It is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road came out back in 2015, and I think us film nerds remember that very well. And it's funny too because it was like I had sort of the same mindset I remember going into that movie as I did Top Gun Maverick. I had not watched the Mad Max movies prior, but I watched the first three in the week leading up to Fury Road coming out in the theaters. And I the first one I liked enough. The second one really captivated me, and
Yeah.
then the third one was like a Return of the Jedi costume play. Um, I wasn't blown away by the trilogy though, I have to admit. I wasn't blown away by the original trilogy. Maybe watching it again down the road or whenever The Wasteland comes out, that might be something I do, but I'm not really sure on that either. But I remember going into Mad Max Fury Road with like kind of like how I approach many blockbusters. I was talking to Catherine about this when we went to go see this. I said, like, it should tell you something that this is a blockbuster that I am friggin' stoked for, because that does not happen very often with
Yeah.
me. Even as a critic, I approach these almost with a sense of obligation. Outside of like Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, some of the series that I really like and connect with. But when I saw Fury Road, I had this like, I hope it's good. I obviously hope every movie I watch is good. But I did not know what I was in for. And the marketing, if you remember, did a really good job of obscuring just how batshit that movie was.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Top Gun Maverick because I called Top Gun Maverick when I reviewed it. I said, this is probably the singular best blockbuster made since Fury Road. And I approached them with like the same sense of apathy. Even Top Gun Maverick, I wasn't like jumping for joy to see. I was more like, I hope this is good. I hope this isn't like a sequel nonsense. And then about an hour into this, I remember thinking like, this might be 4 stars. This is great. And Mad Max Fury Road blew me away. Catherine hadn't seen it. We watched it again this week, the last week technically, and she loved it too. And I think it holds up beautifully. I don't think it is a stretch of the imagination to say that is the singular best action movie of the last decade. You might argue The Raid, Redemption. You might argue some movies and whatnot, but I don't think I would trust a list that didn't have it in the top five. I think that it is top to bottom a stellar movie. And one of my more controversial opinions, you mentioned film Twitter hot takes earlier. One of my more controversial opinions, I think Fury Road is so fucking good top to bottom. I think it almost invalidates the previous movies. I think Fury Road is the movie, like, how many movies can you say got it perfect on the fourth try? And it felt like Miller had the budget, had the backing, had the cast, had the studio support, had the effects team, had everything to make the movie he always wanted to make.
Yeah.
And I think it's so good that you can skip the first three and enjoy it as the start of the series.
Yeah.
That's sort of my long-winded monologue to get into Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. Again, this is the prequel, 7-8 years in the making. And I think right now, too, George Miller's always been a top of the line filmmaker, but I think right now he is truly in a class all of his own. He has made now two stellar action movies in the last decade, in the last 10 years, rather, in Fury Road and Furiosa. Furiosa is the prequel to Fury Road, as I've said before. It stars Anya Taylor-Joy, who is probably in about half the movie because the bulk of the first half of the movie focuses on Furiosa when she's even younger.
Yeah.
Played by Elia Brown. Elia Brown, I think is how you say her name. And basically, this chronicles what led Furiosa to committing the events of Fury Road. It chronicles her childhood. It chronicles her adolescence. It chronicles her multi-year-long pursuit of vengeance against Dr. Dementis, played by Chris Hemsworth. And most of the cast returns for this movie in supporting roles from Fury Road. The only notable absence, rather, obviously Tom Hardy. There's a brief and blink and you miss it cameo by Max, who's played actually by
the stunt double.
The stunt double, Jacob Tamuri. I was looking for his name. The stunt
Tom
double
Hardy
in
stunt
Fury.
double.
Yes. Blink and you miss it cameo, but it's there. The only other cast member who's missing is Hugh Keys-Byrne, who passed away in 2020. He played the original Immortan Joe. But I think Lackley Holm, who steps in for him, I think he does just fine. I don't think he's as built or as buff as the original Immortan Joe, but he's great. I
Yeah.
still think he does a great job at what he
Let
is.
me just say, he's so good. I didn't realize the actor did pass away. You're telling me this now. I thought that was still that 90-year-old man. Just like, good for him, man. Still doing these movies.
Oh, you didn't realize
No, I
Hugh
didn't.
Keys-Byrne died. Yeah, he died in 2020. I forgot until I was looking through the cast for my review, and I was like, oh, yeah, he did die.
Shit, all
I
right.
remember he died during COVID. It was a hectic time in the country, so
Yeah.
it was an easy death to miss, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm just going to come out and say right now, this is another white knuckle knockout punch of a movie. Inevitably, you're going to compare it to something as perfect as Fury Road, and it's not quite as good, but even the complaints I have about it in the grand scheme of the movie are minute enough that I don't think they truly matter. I think they're sort of components. The biggest complaint I have, I'll get into later, that I think does bring the movie down a notch. And this, I don't know if anybody really, I haven't read many reviews of this, so I don't know if people share my thought on that. But I'll quit sucking up all the oxygen, let you get a word in edgewise, Joe. Your general thoughts on Furiosa?
So, to give you my history, because we got more time now to go into this with, just us two and everything. I saw Fury Road opening weekend and everything back in 2015. And I remember, like, my dad was a big Mad Max fan. I never really watched the Mad Max movies, though. I never saw any of them. I knew they were, like, because I played Fallout, I played, I saw the movie The Road. So I saw a lot of people comparing it to, oh, yeah, like, it's apocalyptic, it has some Mad Max stuff to it and everything. I always saw those references. When I saw Fury Road, it blew my mind. It was my favorite movie that year. I thought it was absolutely spectacular in every way. That you can just look up anything about Fury Road, and it's how I basically feel about it. So yeah, when I went back and I went to watch the movies, I didn't like one, loved the second one, thought Beyond the Thunderdome was okay. So leading up to Furiosa, I did give it a retrospective rewatch. I was like, all right, was Fury Road really that good? Did I really feel the same about that trilogy? I could say this now. I actually really do appreciate the first one a whole lot more now than ever. I think because I went into that movie thinking it's going to be the wasteland like it is in Fury Road. It's not that at all. So if you've never seen Mad Max 1, take caution knowing that it's basically set in like just a normal society, but it's just slowly collapsing over time. Once you get to two is where like you get the wasteland stuff.
I
But
was so grateful that I watched those movies before seeing Fury Road. I was so grateful that I did, especially at coming out of Fury Road, I remember, because
yeah,
I'm like, these movies wouldn't have stood a chance. And no matter how unbiased I would have tried to
yeah.
be.
Two still holds up for me just as good. Three I still feel the same about. Fury Road again though stands the test of time to where I do agree with everything you're saying, Steve. I think it's one of the best action movies of that past decade. Yeah, I'm a fan of The Raid. I like the John Wick movies. You can name any action movie to me, but to me, Fury Road was one. Like, if I was on Sleepless with Steve, that would have been probably number one or number two for me that year in terms of my best films of said year. And it's just mainly due to the craftsmanship that George Miller put into that film. And it's like everything you're saying as well. It really did feel like Miller's vision from beginning to end with Fury Road. And he had like basically a whole plethora of toys to play with. You could tell from just how much practicality is in that film in terms of its effects with the cars, the explosions, the makeup, everything, compared to something like, and I'm not saying this as a critique, but compared to something like Furiosa, where it's like, he probably didn't get as much leeway as he did back then with Fury Road. But now we're at Furiosa, the prequel to Fury Road. And yeah, this was, I have to go on my letterbox and take a look, but I usually do like a top 20 most anticipated movies of the year. This was definitely in the top 3. I don't know if this is 1, 2, or 3, but this was definitely in the top 3 because it had everything that I wanted to see going into this. Miller returning, shot on location, shot mostly with practical effects, took its sweet ass time to shoot. When I saw that whole article about the tanker action sequence that's like 15 minutes long took about 3 months to film, I said, okay, that's it. This movie's going to kick ass. And coming out of it, it did. Now, I do have some problems with it, but it's a damn good movie and a damn good follow-up to Fury Road. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is great in this movie, despite only being in half of it. But I hate to say it, because I love her as an actress, and she's like one of my favorite like young actresses in the game right now. But I really do think that Chris Hemsworth kind of stole the show here as Dementus. And every time he was on screen, I was just like, dude, I can't wait to see what he does next. He's basically like throughout Furiosa's childhood, and then once you transition to Anya Taylor-Joy, you don't see him as much anymore. But when he does eventually return in the film, it's just as entertaining, and just like, man, there are just moments of this film I really want to go back and see. And there's moments, I mean, of action, just the cinematography in general, even moments of Anya Taylor-Joy's performance. But majority of the reasons why I do want to go back and see this is to watch his performance again. I know you sent a text like a weekend, leading into the weekend, saying like, Chris Hemsworth, a quick review without spoiling anything. Chris Hemsworth for your consideration. Dude, honestly, will he win it? I don't know, but I do think this is such a good performance from him. He finally got to cut loose enough away from Thor, away from just all like, playing like the stereotypical big white blonde hair man in action films. He got to play something really unique here. I've seen a lot of people say, well, he's still kind of playing stupid and dumb like he is in Thor. No. As somebody who's been keeping up with the Thor movies, this is completely different than that. He is insane. He is a perfect Mad Max villain when you see how crazy this wasteland is. And kudos to his supporting gang of characters as well, because they're just as fun to watch and play out too. He's got one of the best hype mans I've ever seen for a villain, who just echoes everything he's saying and like does the most dramatic on-stage performance to help really sell. It honestly helps boost Chris Hemsworth's performance even more with this guy around too, who's like boosting it around. The look of this film too, I mean, like, it is a gorgeous looking film. For a movie that's shot in the desert, there's so much color. There's so many cool shots of just the sun and shadows and so many other things, silhouettes of people. But let me just jump into this and I'll pass it off to you, Steve. You're here for the action. That's what sold Fury Road. It was one big, long, on the edge of your seat action sequence. Furiosa is more story driven. And when we get later into the show, we could talk about more about that. But I will say this. If you're here for the action, you're not going to be disappointed. It is just as good as Fury Road. The infamous sequence that I was just talking about that's been in reports, every big reveal happening in the action sequence of what are the antagonists going to do next made me just lean back in my chair and go, holy shit, George, you're 80 years old and you still got it in you. Like, every single reveal, I was just like, dude, no way. I mean, like, this movie opens up with like even a really cool sniper sequence where a person's trailing a biker gang and slowly taking them out one by one. And it's like, man, even this is intense. Which is, it's Furiosa's mom chasing her kidnappers. And it's such a damn good sequence too. So even when you get to like, the later half of the film, and there's this whole sequence where Furiosa's got to protect this guy, and she's using a sniper, and he's driving the big tanker. Action sequence after action sequence. I saw people saying like, well, I mean, like, that was the best one, the tanker sequence, and then all the other ones were good, but nothing tops that. Is like, look, yeah, sure, but like, all of them are good in their very own way. They all have something different to offer with these action sequences, which is something that I think action movies usually miss out on, is that they try to do bigger and bigger. Like, okay, we're getting to the climax, we gotta go super big. Where you get with Furiosa, and it's just George Miller just comes up with a different way to just have a cool action sequence. Like, okay, let me do this with an action sequence. Let me just do a whole different type of thing now. Okay, I did a car chase early in the film. I did a sniper sequence. What if I just combine them both? Okay, for the big climax, it's just a showdown. Nothing too crazy. It's just a one-on-one showdown. And you know what? A film like this, when it's a revenge flick, it works the best when it's like that, because then it feels way more... It feels more satisfying than just like things are blowing up, people are getting flung left and right. When it's just the main antagonist and the main character going at it, ooh, that feels so much more satisfying than any other action movie. I could go on and on about the positives, and I will if we need to, but I'm gonna pass it back off to you, Steve.
I'll say first things first. No rocket ship required for these action sequences either, which is very much a blessing. You make a good point about how Miller, I don't think, feels the need to up the ante. I think this is a very comfortable setting, and a setting that is, again, a barren wasteland, which Miller uses as his playground for the thing. And yeah, I think the action here is stellar. But I will, going back to what I said about Chris Hemsworth's performance after the movie too. The year is young. There's still a bevy of great performances that we haven't seen and haven't even heard about yet. But I will say is that I think Chris Hemsworth should get serious consideration for an Oscar nomination. And you know what it's going to be? It's going to start the whole Barbie problem over again, where Ryan Gosling got nominated, but Margot Robbie didn't. And that's kind of the weird part about this movie, is that Anya Taylor-Joy is really good, but she is in a role that does not have a lot of dialogue in it and relies mainly on her physical presence and her physicality, which she is sublime at and deserves praise.
Her eyes do a lot of the acting here, and she's always been great at that with her eyes.
This is such a random reference, but it reminds me of George Carlin's bit about The Quiet Man. And George Carlin did a bit about, like, whenever a tragedy happens, they interview people that knew the person who committed it, and they're always like, he was a quiet man. Nobody ever would have expected him. And then George Carlin says, it's always the quiet man. He's like, we got to watch the quiet man. But he's like, you ever go to a bar and there's a quiet man sitting at the end of the bar all by himself drinking an old fashioned? Nobody's bothering him. He's got nothing to say. You barely notice him. And then there's some asshole with a baseball bat at the other bar going like, I'm going to shoot the next motherfucker that looks at me weird. He's like, that's why we don't pay attention to the quiet man. And that's what it reminds me of Anya Taylor-Joy here, is that Chris Hemsworth is loud. He's brash. He's diabolical, he's evil, and he's darkly funny. But he's arresting, all those qualities aside, he's arresting because we've never seen Chris Hemsworth do this before. We've never seen him operate quite like this. So he's acting against type here, and he's doing a sublime job. And I think if Joaquin Phoenix can win for the Joker, I think if Heath Ledger can win for the Joker, I don't see why Chris Hemsworth could not get an Oscar nomination. And before you even think about...
And Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, come on, man. We can give it to blockbuster, performances. Like,
we can. I mean, I don't even know what kind of competition he'd be up against, too. So I'm not even saying he would win. I'm saying he merits consideration and merits a nomination at this point in time. But I'll even just add, too, then, like... people might forget, because it has been 8 years. Mad Max Fury Road got nominated for 5 fucking Oscars. Like, it was not this little engine that could movie either. It was this blockbuster that was so successful. Again, Top Gun Maverick got Oscar nominations too. Like this genre has been able to captivate audiences and even get critical acclaim and awards for it. I don't see why Hemsworth couldn't get nominated, though.
You look at this. I mean, this is the same. It's the same when you have like a visionary director like Cameron with Avatar. Avatar got nominated as well, back with its original movie and its sequel. Like, it's the same thing here. Miller is a visionary director.
It belongs in that echelon.
Exactly. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I think this is a top to bottom really captivating movie. And you said it too with the twist. The movie was written by George Miller and his writing partner Nico Lathoris. And the thing that's really amazing is, again, like, I know this is a prequel, but it's the 5th installment in this franchise. How many movies keep surprising you the 5th time around? And when I say surprise, I don't mean like, and again, to bring this comparison up again, I don't mean like Fast and Furious, like launching a fucking car into space or something like that. That's something that's just so outlandish. Jason Voorhees going to space or some shit. Like, not that kind of surprise, but a surprise or a twist that you really didn't see coming. Knock towards the end, or at the very end. And people can, say that these action sequences are derivative from the previous movie and they have the same sort of road rage feel as Fury Road, but you're never quite sure how they're going to end. You're never quite sure how it's going to end. The
Yeah.
main difference with Furiosa, besides the absence of Mad Max, I would say, is that this movie is more punctuated with story,
Yes.
which isn't a bad thing. Where Fury Road, going back to Fury Road is such a lean movie for being 2 hours long. It is narratively lean.
Yeah.
It gives you the bare basics of the plot and enough so you won't be confused or questioned too deeply. And then it just goes off the rails.
Yeah.
And that Furiosa definitely revels more in sort of the quieter parts, which makes sense. It's a character study.
You know how I said, like, in our Dune 2 review, like, I said that the Dune 2, like, story-wise and character-wise, you and Dom kind of felt the same, where, it's a bit lacking still in that regard. But for me, I thought I did it better in the sequel, and I felt like the world is telling me its story. Fury Road is the best example of doing that, where it's like the world is doing all the storytelling for me and everything happening around it. From characters just interacting to cutting back to Immortan Joe and all the action that's taking place. Fury Road is the perfect example of that. But yeah, Furiosa going to this film, yeah, it's a lot more. It's actually more of a traditional Mad Max movie because of the fact that it actually has like a storyline to follow it with, a crazy lunatic, and this character gets involved in some sort of way and is just kind of thrown into this situation. And they are slowly working their way out of this situation as best as they can. Like, it honestly felt more of a Mad Max movie, which, for all the people bitching and moaning that Max isn't in this and it's a prequel, this actually felt, if you want to get down to the meat of it, this felt more like a traditional Mad Max movie than Fury Road did. That's not saying Fury Road's bad. It's my favorite of the bunch. But if you are a big Mad Max fan, this felt more like the original trilogy.
I said in my original review of Fury Road, which you can read at stevepulaski.com, it feels so pretentious to quote yourself. I'm not saying this is profound. This is just what I originally wrote, and I included it in my review of Furiosa. But I said, if Fury Road was a film that pulsates with life and energy, taking one exhilarating, cacophonous circumstance, I went to college, after another, and bathing it in road rage, gasoline, and unbridled chaos. I said, if Fury Road was that, what I just described, then Furiosa merges exhilaration with profound emotion. The emotion you felt in Fury Road, it doesn't invalidate it at all. It doesn't make it a lesser movie. But the emotion you felt when watching Fury Road, especially for the first time, is adrenaline. Is really adrenaline and captivation and just like the feeling you get when you watch a movie and you're like, I've never seen something like this before. Most recently, like, I mean, Top Gun Maverick in a way, but Top Gun Maverick, I said it looks different when it's real, like it was in Maverick.
Yeah.
Avatar 2, underwater motion capture, something you've never seen before. With Furiosa, the story is fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The story is heartbreaking. Like it's a simple story at its core, but there are some really sad bits in this movie. Like the loss of her mother being the execution of her mother very early into the movie that haunts her for the rest of her life, or at least until she confronts Dementus. And then it's the loss, and you almost forget it's coming, but the loss of her arm. The loss of her arm.
Dude, when that happened, I went, "Oh, that's right!" Like I literally shot it in the
You
theater.
almost forget. Even I just watched the damn thing like 3 days before, and I'm like, I almost forgot. Yeah, she has to lose her arm somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's another great way that Miller and Laurentis just keep you guessing. But that's the difference with Furiosa. And I'm not saying it's a better movie. I don't think it's better than Fury Road, but I think that what Miller had to do for this movie to be great was not the action. I think it had to give us legitimate emotional attachment to Furiosa, building on what we already had from Fury Road, and I think it delivers that in spades.
Okay. I think this is where you and me are going to veer off into two different directions now.
Okay.
For me, I think the movie starts out like that, but I do think the second act, it loses focus of what the movie is about. I think it starts to focus more on all the other characters in this movie rather than focusing on Furiosa. Now, it's not a bad thing. I think they actually do give some great scenes to Immortan Joe and figuring out how he works with Gastown and Bullet Town and how all that works and how that played into Fury Road later on. You get introduced to a man that was the talk of the weekend as well, but Tom Burke as Praetorian Jack. who's basically just Mad Max in this movie. Like, no one can convince me
Kind
otherwise.
of.
He's just basically Mad Max. He's as mysterious. Honestly, it's funny that looking back and watching Fury Road, like Furiosa comes in, she steals the show and everything. And in this movie, you have Dementis kind of see the show, but then you already have Praetorian Jack coming in. He's playing like a mysterious, badass character, and like he also kind of just in scenes. I'm like, damn, this guy, like, he's stealing the show too. Now again, yeah, this is due to the fact that Furiosa is a woman of few words and everything, and like we said, Anya Taylor-Joy acts more through her physicality rather than actually like saying lines and everything. But I do think this second act, like, while it has, I think, like, yeah, it has the tanker sequence and a few other action sequences that are fantastic, I kind of started to feel the length at this time because it just started kind of bouncing around for me. Where it was like, it's introducing so many plot threads and characters and everything. And even by the end of the movie, where it gets back to Furiosa and Dementis, I was like, you know what? I'm like, I do want her to get her revenge because the movie starts out so strong with that, and you're like locked in at like the mother death and her being raised by Dementis in such a horrible way and everything. That I was just like, by the time you get to like the end, I'm just like, I kind of wish we spent more time with her developing this rage towards Dementis, because I'm not really feeling it here like I did at the start. And I really do think that is due to the fact that the second act focuses on everything but Furiosa. And then when you get to the third act, we switch back to Furiosa's plot line. It's the biggest problem I have with the movie, where I do feel like it's a bit bloated with how much it's trying to introduce in this film in terms of story, when I felt like, damn, I do think like maybe kind of pulling back on it and just focusing mostly on this revenge plot would have actually been better. I get George also wanted to really cover a lot of the backstory here that was introduced in the Fury Road, or that's not explained in Fury Road, I should say. But I also think that's what gave Fury Road just so much more fun, is that like you're kind of being introduced to these things and you got to figure out what all this means and everything. But now we have the context to it and whatnot. It was like the only criticism I had with this movie. It was like, as much fun as I had throughout the whole film, the second act to me, and it's unfortunately the longest, did feel really bloated and kind of stuck out. Like, this kind of feels almost like a separate movie at times when I'm watching it.
That's sort of the issue with prequels, I think, is that
there's that too. Yeah,
I didn't feel that way as strongly, but what I will say is, if you look at other prequels, and I think this is like, I mean, there's the box office prequel problem, and I think there's the narrative prequel problem.
Yeah,
the problem you get with prequels, you saw this a little bit maybe in Solo, and Lightyear was just a goddamn mess. Lightyear was just a misguided. That movie should have never been greenlit. That movie was a top to bottom. That's a movie I've gone on to hate even more the more I think about it. But here's the problem with prequels, though, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at too, is that like prequels in this case that are focusing on a character, they have the primary obligation of further developing the origin story of that character. But when you have, again, they're a prequel for a reason. They're showing what happened before a movie you just saw. The problem is, though, they have to catch the plot up eventually. They have to show the cause that led to the effect. And when you do that, when you kind of lose the focus of the central character, and then the other gripe might be then the movie ends at point F when the Fury Road would start at like point H.
Yeah.
And you don't have the connective tissue, because this movie seamlessly, by the time it ends, seamlessly connects with Fury
Which
Road.
I thought
like
was cool. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know they were going to do that with the ending.
Like a train track.
Yeah.
Just connects beautifully. And then you could even imagine like towards the end of Fury Road, like the start of Fury Road starting about with like 15 minutes left of the plots converging in
I'm
a way.
not kidding. I would love to watch these two movies stitched together. Like, I would actually sit down to watch that.
Yeah, you almost get like an alternate perspective.
Yeah.
My complaints, however, and I'll tackle them more in mass, or I'll probably maybe even save them till after the intermission. My complaints, honestly, are more, and this is going to sound bad without development, but I'll leave it on a cliffhanger. My complaints are more aesthetic than narrative. My complaints are more aesthetic than narrative. I have one small one and one like small to medium one.
Okay.
As I said before, I think they are nitpicks that do not hamper really in retrospect the larger impact of the movie or the larger thing of the movie, because the movie's good enough to
Yeah.
overcome these flaws.
That is how I feel too. Like, even though I said what I said about the second act, what you're saying right there is how I just feel about the film overall. It's so damn good that like I'm still praising this to the highest degree that I feel.
And it says something how good that should be, a viewer's word of a recommendation there, that, for lesser movies, the problem you just outlined could cripple the whole thing.
Exactly.
Could really, really sink a movie. But Furiosa is so well written and is so entertaining that it can almost get by on these sort of hangups. My complaints are smaller, but we'll dive into them after intermission, and then we're going to save some the remainder of the show time to talk about the passing of documentarian Morgan Spurlock at the age of 53. The gruesome twosome we're handling Sleepless with Steve. Our buddy and co-host Dominic Guanzon is out for today. Joe's still doing a great job of managing the rebranded, aesthetically pleasing show as well. We'll be back here in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening.
When I have a hard day, I like to go in the shower and reflect. And I think, I think we've all done this. We all
all these other things
have those moments where we're in the shower silently to ourselves, and we just kind of go through all the hard stuff again, including the arguments, where it's like, yeah, I could have said that better. I had this in the back of my mind. Yeah, I could have done that. I could have said that. I got to be better next time. But, the next day, I just kind of try and be better. What I don't do is make a 4-part film series trying to prove my point, despite throwing in as many straw mans, as many made up scenarios, as many cliches, as many, not even Hollywood cliches. These are Hallmark cliches thrown into so many of these like really poorly made moments. Man, the first, like, this is like in the first, I think 10 minutes of the film, which hard to say where the start of the movie was, because there were like 5 intros of the same God's Not Dead montage. I don't know if it's a Fathom Events thing or maybe just my theater, but anyway.
No,
dude,
that was mine too. I didn't know where the actual thing started either, because they go through like I don't know if it was like the David A.R. White intro or was part of the movie or what.
Which was not good. But in any case, like the scene where I think one mother is dropping kids off at the homeschool. And did you notice there were like, Steve, did you notice there were like hard, like cuts, like 3 cuts per second in that one scene? I don't mean to be so detailed. I rarely do this, but like the cutting, the editing was so bad in that simple exchange. It's literally just mom drops off kid at homeschool, and then 2 mothers discuss innocuous things. But I swear to God, there was putrid editing, right? Like it was like the only other time where I noticed something that bad was the opening scene in the Mulan remake, where it's just the kid doing backflips in a Chinese village, and it's like cutting like every millisecond. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is so bad. And that is par for the course for this movie.
Did you feel like, here's my question. I didn't lobby this complaint towards the movie because I don't know who to blame, if it's actually the movie or my theater. Did the movie look like it was zoomed into you?
Yes. Did it feel like a traditional like aspect ratio of like standard movies?
I forget the felt names. Like it was shot in zoom.
Yeah,
it felt the characters felt unnervingly big. Like I felt too close to certain things. Like it was very odd, and I didn't know if it was the movie's issue or a masking issue in my theater.
You know, a movie's got problems when you have to make sure your screening and your theater wasn't messing up, and it wasn't.
It was like Candyman all over again. The damn intro. You know what I mean? I'm like, am I nuts, or is this? Because I'm like, it just looks really weird. It looks like Dom brings up a better point than I did. It looks like it was almost filmed in 4:3 as opposed to 16:9 widescreen.
I actually I'm so glad you brought this up, because I remember looking at the sides. I'm like, this is weird. Like, this is boxier than like a typical movie. I haven't been to the theaters in a while, but I can
That's
tell.
a good way. It's boxy.
It's like, has this film been formatted to fit this screen? Like, what is going on? Zoomers won't get that joke. But anyway,
no, they won't.
Like, it's like, dude, we already like, Discount Chad Kroger from Nickelback, aka David A.R. White, already has a massive face. I don't need to see more of it. But in any case, yeah, let's get to the meat of this, which is that this is a really poorly done film on so many levels.
Back and better than ever, it is Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Shout out to Joe once again, not only for just the sexy rebrand of the show, but also embedding clips into the intermission so you don't get sick of hearing Jackson Brown's instrumental for running on empty on repeat. Excellent job. I was wondering, Catherine's got it playing in the background too on her phone, and I stopped and looked. I'm like, what review is this? I heard Hallmark cliches, and I'm like, what review is this? This is an old one, clearly. And then I heard myself say David A.R. White, and I'm like, oh, it's God's Not Dead, We the People, the worst movie of the decade so far, and it's not particularly close. But we are here to talk about, in contrast, a great movie, Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. So I believe I was getting into criticisms here. One of the criticisms I have, and I don't know if I would have had this had I not watched Fury Road, and it's not a comparison thing, it's an aesthetic thing. The action here is very good, but it's got that sort of digital sheen to it, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
It's got this, especially, and here's the thing, some people are gonna be like, what the hell are you talking about? Look at the fire.
Yeah.
The fire is really where I see it the most.
It really stuck out when somebody was on fire and moving around. That's why I noticed it the most.
There's a digital sheen to this movie that I don't think is as apparent, or maybe muted and utilized less in Fury Road. And I also think, too, there's the most inexcusable thing effects-wise in this movie are the fucking CGI dogs. When Dementis initially captures Praetorian Jack and Furiosa on the back of that Jeep, and he lets the dogs out.
Yeah.
And there's 3 of them, I think. They're like Rottweiler dogs.
Yeah.
Like, they look fake. And I was kind of shocked that Miller would have employed that or signed off on that, because he's got Final Cut. The effects aren't bad. They're very good. I mean, I don't know what I'm saying. The effects are very good, but you can really see it in the fire. They have this digital gloss to them.
Yeah.
That looks a little too neat and a little too like almost smoothed over in a way. It's hard to explain. You have to like be showing it to somebody to really like explain it. But the fire, I noticed it was was sort of the digital sheen of it. That's a minute complaint. I don't think it's not like a Quantumania problem or anything like that. By no means. My other complaint, and I might be on an island with this, but because I've only read maybe 2 full reviews of this movie. I really haven't read much outside of Letterboxd clippings. It's so weird when a sequel, or a prequel in this case, is scored by the same person, and I did not feel the score in this movie that much. The contrast to Fury Road, I think Fury Road is a lot like Forrest Gump. I think you take the score out and you take half the movie away in so many ways, with the crunchy electric guitars, the guitar riffs, the metal jams, which is not my style of music, I will say. But Tom Holkenberg's score here, I don't feel like hits very much.
It doesn't. I have to actually agree with you on that. That is something that once you brought it up, it kind of dawns on me too. I love listening to the original the original score to Mad Max Fury Road. I'm not like listening to it like when I'm working out, but like anytime I'm like doing anything like like working and I just need background music, it is something I might queue up just because it gets you going. It's got a
beautiful,
it's really good. Like if I'm cleaning the house or something, sometimes I'll throw that soundtrack on. I'm not even kidding. You're right about Furiosa when it comes to its original score. Nothing really sticks out, which is really surprising because it is scored by the same person. I guess, and to go off your other criticism that you had too about the aesthetic of the film, for me, I guess, is that everything else about this movie is going off and doing it so well that stuff like that didn't bother me as much, even though I'm noticing it while watching the movie, like the spotty CGI, with fire, the dogs, even some of the cars at sometimes. I think it's even more, I think it even stuck out more to me while I was watching it because I did watch Fury Road ahead of watching Furiosa, and Fury Road is majority of it is practical effects, very little of it's
Yes.
CG. So when
And
you go
it,
see
you feel it.
yeah, when you go see Furiosa, which is it's still majority practical, but like there's definitely a lot more special effects used here. I think like just kind of watching Fury Road and going to watch Furiosa, I was like, shit, it's sticking out more than ever to me now because I'm like, wait, no, I'm like that's definitely not real right there. And even with the score, like I was like going back to my point, everything else about the movie was doing it so well that these two things, I know you said they were so minor to you, they're almost nitpicks, is what you said. They kind of just glazed over me. Even like you bring up the score right now, I'm like, shit, that was something that like I totally did register, but it's just not coming to my mind when I think of like bad things about the movie.
No, it doesn't inhibit the movie to a great degree, or really to any significant degree. I do think it kind of, I always say, far be it from me to punish a good movie for not being great, and far be it from me in this case to punish a great movie for not being excellent.
Yeah.
I just think, though, when you think back to Fury Road, the music is so married to the success of that movie, especially with the post-apocalyptic version, Drummer Boy, the guitarist in that movie, who is like not even, you don't realize how ancillary he is to it until you see it again,
Yeah.
and you realize that that fucker's rocking the whole time, and it adds this energy. I guess what you could chalk it up to is the fact that Furiosa being more of a character drama, and it is an action movie, but it's also got a character drama angle to it. I think a lot of Hulkenberg's score is devoted to like operatic synths and somber tones, which makes sense, but it doesn't impact as much. The good news is that the action set pieces, everything else has so much energy to it and so much care and attention and artistic vision to it that it sort of it can walk, it can run, even it can run without being sort of handicapped or kneecapped by that, rather. Those are really all I got in terms of complaints for this movie, though. I didn't feel the crowdedness of the movie that you did. But I can kind of see what you mean, though, too, because it feels like more characters are being forced into the movie than in Fury Road, which is very, as I said before, very lean.
Mhm.
But if we want to go into closing thoughts here, I don't know if you have anything to add. I'll give you first crack at closing thoughts.
No, I don't have anything else to add really. Yeah, so I'll just close it out here with my thoughts of the film. This is George Miller's. It's still his heavy metal fantasy. All right, like it's still at the end of the day, it's still that. Despite my big complaint about it and everything, it's still one of the best films I saw this year. It's probably gonna show up on. It may show up in my best of list. I don't know. It depends how the rest of the year goes. But it's definitely gonna be in like the 5 through 10, maybe an honorable mention. Depending on how the rest of the year goes, it's warranted its best of like spot no matter what. I was I very much was entertained. I saw this in Dolby as well. And for those of you who still have not seen the movie, try to see it in a premium format if possible. It is very much worth it, just like Top Gun Maverick was. Seeing this on a Dolby screen with Dolby Atmos like surround sound system, oh my god, man! It's why I love going to the movie theater. It really was. For me, this is 3.5 out of 4 stars. A very highly enthusiastic 3.5 out of 4 stars. Not where Fury Road is at with its 4 stars, but damn, it came close at times, man. I can't wait to see if Miller, gets around to working on Wasteland and actually, like gets through it, because if it takes the amount of time that Furiosa did, I don't know if he'll be too old to where he wants to retire and just pass it off to somebody else. But man, if he sticks around and he closes out like, just like a new trilogy is, I guess we could call it, like the rebooted trilogy of Mad Max, which is, it could be this film, Fury Road, and Wasteland. Dude, honestly, it might have a chance to just be, I might just tell people, just skip the original trilogy, go straight to this one. Start with this, go to Fury Road, and end with Wasteland. Whatever the hell the order of sequence is going to be with those movies. It is 3.5 out of 4 stars, like I said. Can't wait to go see the next one.
Very well said. I will wrap up just by reading the very short paragraph that I wrote, because I think it sums it up the best, too. At least how I felt about this. I said, which you can read at stevepulaski.com. I said, in quoting the original film, "Oh, what a lovely day when a highly anticipated 9-figure film is more than just a compilation of rapidly improving special effects and is instead another symphony of aesthetics converged with high-level storytelling and unbridled artistry. What a lovely day indeed." 3.5 out of 4 stars for me. Really like this movie. Hope people see it. I hope it has legs. I don't think it's really going to face any stiff competition in the next couple of weeks. And I think what would be the next big movie coming out? Inside Out
Twisters.
2? Hmm?
I would say if you're saying same audience, maybe I would say Twisters. Inside Out 2 definitely is like the next big thing.
But it's a different audience, is what I
Yeah.
was going to get at, too.
Yeah.
That's a different audience altogether.
Because I don't think as much as I'm a Bad Boys fan, I don't think that's gonna get any attention. I think that's gonna bomb at the box office.
Yeah, I feel like there's no hype for that movie, and we're like a week out from it.
Those trailers have sucked. I'll say as a Bad Boys fan, every time I saw those trailers before any movie leading up to it, I'm like, this just doesn't look good, man. Like, it's not selling me on this at all.
I think it's an old property. I think it's an old property. I don't think there's much fanfare anymore for it. I think when it came back, because Bad Boys 3 was talked about for years. I think when it came back, there was like a reinvigoration point to it. But now I also think too, because he said he wasn't going to do any press for it, and he's been fucking shunned ever since the Oscars incident. I think Will Smith not being out in front either, I think it does really hurt this movie. And I think his reputation sort of impacts it in a way.
It's another movie I think that's gonna bomb just because of how the summer's going, and I feel like even though I'm looking forward to it, I don't know how many other people are. A Quiet Place, the prequel as well.
See, I'm looking forward to that one. I'm a Quiet Place
too.
fan. I'm sick of seeing the damn trailers for that for as much as we go to the theater. I'm sick of seeing the damn trailers for it. But the thing is, it's going to be interesting to see because that's another prequel.
Yeah.
And I wonder. You got a point. I really didn't think of it bombing, really, but I guess I didn't see Furiosa and the Fall Guy underperforming either. So, like, I guess anything is truly possible here.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I really don't see in terms of big blockbusters though. Like Twisters is like the next one I really see, and then probably Deadpool after that. Those are in July, both of them.
I will say I'm really friggin' pumped for Twisters. I'm really pumped for that one. And I woke up, I kid you not, my alarm went off this morning, and I woke up to the first song released from the soundtrack. It's Luke Combs, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma. That fucking banger will get you out of bed, mark my words. That is a banger. I really hope I told Catherine today, I hope that song plays when the twister hits. I really do. Because Luke Combs, not only being one of my favorite artists working today, but that guy can do like arena rock for a country artist, like really make a song feel huge. And that song is stellar. I think it's energy. I hope they don't play it during the opening credits. Like, and they waste it on that. I hope that comes in at a climactic point of the movie. But we will end the show by talking about this. Normally for when we remember actors or directors or anybody associated with film or pop culture who have died, we start the show with it. But this one, on top of being shocking, I think there's more to unpack with this one than there is a lot of them. Because a lot of the time, especially recently, the people who have died have either been sick, like publicly sick, or they've been old enough to the point where it was more or less, as sad to say, expected, but no less sad. This death, as I said in opening the show, really floored me. Morgan Spurlock, the documentarian behind Super Size Me, most famously, the Oscar-nominated movie where Morgan Spurlock underwent the experiment of eating McDonald's 3 times a day for 30 days, passed away at the age of 53 after a private cancer battle. There's no other sort of development related to it. We don't know what kind of cancer it was. I think it would be almost cruel to speculate publicly, at least. But if that name has really escaped your mind over the last several years, nobody could blame you, because and I wonder, because of how just much of a hurricane in itself the Me Too movement was. I don't think it got lost in the shuffle, but I do think it had I think it had very clear impact. And it was odd timing too for a career move. But in December 2017, just as Spurlock was getting ready to release Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken. By the way, there is a Super Size Me sequel. Joe did not know that. A lot of people didn't know that either. A lot of people didn't know that. And this is probably why. Spurlock wrote a blog post. It was on Twitter. It was like on one of those sites like TwitDeck, or back when you could like write essays on Twitter on like a separate third-party site. it was right in the middle of the Me Too movement, and he came out and he basically admitted to like years, decades of sexual harassment of employees, misconduct of employees. He got accused of rape when he was in college. I mean, it was a damning self admission and confession. Initially, I remember reading it, not only being shocked, but I remember reading it like thinking two things. I thought like, is his next project going to tackle the Me Too movement and he needs to get this out there in order to like absolve himself and like be completely transparent? Because and I'll talk more in a minute, but he's was always a documentarian where you didn't really know what was next. And that was one of the things I did admire about him as a filmmaker. But it completely, it completely killed his career. Super Size Me 2 got indefinitely delayed. YouTube Red was going to distribute it. They didn't. The movie didn't come out for another year, almost a year and a half. That release got canceled. He stepped down from his production company, Warrior Poets, and then that company folded. And he basically was never heard from again in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Super Size Me 2 had a super low key release in like September of 2019. Clearly, I feel like I'm only
2019.
2019, yeah.
Oh my God.
It came out a year and a half after it was supposed to come out. And again, evidently nobody paid attention to it besides me. But basically that completely annihilated his career. And the next time you basically heard about him was when he died 6 or 7 years later, last week. One of the things, and he's got obviously with just that, he's got a complicated legacy. But looking at him as a documentarian, first off, Super Size Me was oddly one of my favorite movies as a kid. And I can't, I rewatched it late on Saturday night. I rewatched it, which is probably like the 15th time I've seen it. I can quote a documentary. That's how many times I've seen it. The thing about it was, I think what captivated me, I mean, number one, McDonald's wins every kid's heart over. When I was like 9 when the thing came out and saw it. McDonald's wins every kid over. Number two, the movie had a banger soundtrack.
It did.
So much so they released an OST of it. Nice. Like and I have the fucking soundtrack too. That's how much I loved it. I love the soundtrack of the movie. And the other thing I guess I forgot to mention too was about that essay he released, was the fact that that essay basically invalidated Super Size Me, because he admitted and sort of like blamed in a way, like the assault and the misconduct. He was like questioning why he would even do that as somebody who wouldn't recognize himself as somebody to do it. He said something to the tune of, was it because I've been an alcoholic for 30 and haven't been sober a day in my life for the last 30 years? And if you remember, one of the most damning realizations of Super Size Me, and part of what made it such an explosive documentary, was the fact that it wasn't really previously thought that a high fat or trans fat laden diet could lead to liver complications. Because that's the big thing of the movie, is towards the third act of the movie, the doctors start saying like, your liver is sick.
Yeah.
Like you have, like the one guy even says too, he's like, you have the liver of a binge drinking alcoholic.
Yeah.
And he never admits that in the documentary. I don't even know if he drank during, you don't even know if he drank during the documentary.
If he did, cameras weren't rolling, that's for sure.
Oh, obviously not. And then you look at some of the things, like I remember even thinking as a kid, it's weird. I'm like, you threw up. You must not eat this food. His girlfriend was vegan. I'm like, you must not eat this food regularly if you're throwing up from a quarter pounder with cheese meal. But then you look at like some of the complications he has. Like he gets twitchy. He gets sort of like addicted to it. He gets the shakes. He sweats. And part of that obviously comes from a fatty diet. But then you wonder too, you're like, are you going through withdrawals? If you really did quit drinking, are you going through withdrawals during this experiment? And that's what invalidates that movie. So I look at it as like a piece of pop entertainment and like a cultural zeitgeist touchstone at the time.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a very deep movie either. But if you look at his future movies too, he did a documentary called Where in the World is Osama bin Laden, which is a very odd movie. But the funniest part of the movie was, though, at the end of the movie, I only seen it once, but at the end of the movie, Morgan Spurlock like doesn't want to go into this area of Pakistan where there's signs basically saying we can't guarantee your safety. And he's got a newborn at home.
Yeah.
And so he turns around, and the end voiceover is him saying, if I had to guess, I think bin Laden is hiding in the tribal lands of Pakistan near a town named Peshawar, Pakistan. 3 years after the movie comes out, the United States conducts the operation that kills bin Laden. He was found fucking 200 kilometers away from Peshawar in Abbottabad.
Morgan found Osama bin Laden, bro.
He came damn close.
What the
He
fuck? They
came-
didn't go over that in Zero Dark 30.
He came damn close, 200 kilometers away from where he opined that he might be based on his research. I'm like, I remember that, and I'm like, damn, this guy's got a little more attention, a little more attention than
I
you
want to
think.
get in contact with the character that Jessica Chastain played as in Zero Dark 30 and just be like, all right, be honest. Did you watch Where in the World is Osama bin Laden? You went, hold on a minute, that actually might be true.
Other movies he did, I think probably his de facto best movie is The Greatest Movie Ever Sold.
I saw
Tom
that
Wonderful
one. That was
Princess.
on Netflix for like the longest time when Netflix first came out.
It
And
was.
I was like, oh my god! I'm like, this is the guy from Super Size Me. I love that movie. That movie's great.
That was a pretty good movie about product placement. He makes a documentary about product placement funded entirely by product placement.
Yeah.
He did Comic-Con episode 4, A Fan's Hope, which was basically sort of a clip show reel of Comic-Con, but still very touching. He did a documentary on male grooming called Mansome, that got some attention at the time. And he also did the One Direction movie, This Is Us, the 3D concert
Are you
movie.
serious?
He directed
Wow,
that One
okay.
Direction, This Is Us, which was not a half bad movie. And then he also made the other documentary, and this was probably his worst in my opinion. Was a movie called Rats. It was about rat infestations in big cities.
Oh.
And I know, right? Like, I will say, for a guy, he did not get as much credit for as versatile as he was.
Yeah.
A lot of these documentaries were very low key, which is kind of ironic, being that Super Size Me was such a huge hit. And I think you said this too when I sent you the link that he died. And I want you to kind of go into this too. You even said, like, Super Size Me, you think got a lot of people paying attention to documentaries in the mainstream light.
Yeah. No, I do. I think it was the documentary that helped put documentaries into theaters as much as we get now with, like, what the hell was it? My neighbor, what was it? Oh my god. A Lovely Day in the Neighborhood.
Oh, well, Won't You Be My
Won't
Neighbor?
You Be My Neighbor? Thank you. Yeah, Won't You Be My Neighbor? The documentary about that clock tower sniper, where like half of it's like animated, like they recreate some of the scenes through like animation and everything.
Oh yeah, what the hell is that called? I'm friends with the director of that on Facebook too. I really should know.
And like, I think that movie really made it go, hey, wait, documentaries can go to theaters and they can make money. And I think it is because of the cultural impact that Super Size Me had. Dude, I mean, like, I watched that movie in school like 6 times. I watched it in 5th grade. We watched it in 6th grade. I watched it in 7th grade. I watched it in 8th grade. And we watched it one more time in high school for health class.
It was a school movie. I saw it twice in school.
I remember just sitting there. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I've seen this movie 5 times just because of school. Like, and I shit you not, though, like, when that eventually came to Netflix, it became one of my favorite things to watch just because I think it's a fun documentary. Now, yeah, looking back on it, yes, there are problems in that documentary in terms of the research that goes into it and what we know now about Morgan in terms of his health. That we know some of the results are definitely skewed because of that with his liver and everything. But there's still stuff he brings up in that documentary that I think is fun, or actually, like, pretty good point when it comes to the McDonald's Corporation itself and how much of a chokehold it does have on, like, the youth and everything. I was like, it does bring up that, and it does a good job covering that. But at the end of the day, I thought it was an entertaining documentary.
That's the word I use. I think he was a good entertainer.
Yeah.
Like, I think and I almost look at him more of an entertainer than a documentarian, especially when you look at the movies. Like, I mean, I saw One Direction, This Is Us in theaters when it came out. But the reason I think a lot of people don't know he did that movie was I don't remember him being a part of that documentary. I think he just directed it. He didn't involve himself
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean, like, you know, if,
story.
if his old ass came on camera, a bunch of girls in the audience would be like, "Who the hell's he?"
That's exactly right. Whereas, like, he was always at this, all the documentaries he did, he almost had this Michael Moorish quality
Yeah,
about him where he would insert himself into the story. It was about him eating McDonald's, him finding bin Laden, him getting product placement deals to fund a movie about product placement.
yeah,
Like, he was the central figure in all of his documentaries. Rats, I think he's only the narrator, but. And Manson, he's directly involved in too, I remember. So that's why I think of him more as an entertainer than I do a documentarian. And that's where I think Super Size Me and like I could never ethically review that movie, like in terms of just like being unbiased. You know what I mean? Like I can't really do that. I republished my review of Super Size Me 2 on my website when he died,
yeah,
because I was like I could be far more objective about this. I didn't grow up with it, and I didn't have the fucking CD. Like, you know what I mean? It's hard to go back and review those movies that
yeah.
were foundational for you in a way, especially when it's a movie like
God,
Super Size Me,
dude,
which you might think of as
I
bullshit.
remember in fifth grade when I watched it for the very first time, and the teacher asked the class, "Does anybody here eat McDonald's every day?" And there was a girl, like I'm not making fun of her by saying this, but she was suffering from obesity problems and everything, and she
Sure.
raised her hands and she said it's because her family works long shifts, it's easy and affordable and everything. And I think like I to me as a kid, I'm listening to this. I'm like, well, I mean, isn't that something we should be paying attention to? The fact that like Americans are working this long and to feed their family, this is the only outcome. Which the documentary does actually mention at one point. They just don't go into it, but a person does bring up. One of the people he interviews talks about how like, yeah, I mean, there's just times where it's like I work all day and then I have to go home and feed the kids. It's like I stop off at Wendy's, I stop off at Burger King, I stop off at McDonald's because it's just an easy solution. And instead, what the teacher took away from that when all right, you see, you better not eat McDonald's because and
Oh
I'm like,
no.
oh no, and it led
No.
into like a whole bad thing at my school. Like it was just terrible.
I
um
mean, it's like you don't shame the kid who's kind like I remember reading there was a meme years and years ago, probably 10 years ago I saw it.
yeah,
It's like there's an unwritten ethics code that
I mean,
even
what'd you expect
kids
from a
know.
gym teacher though? I mean,
And I know like when kids can be dicks, but I think when you get to like late middle school, early high school, it's like you don't make fun of somebody with like crooked teeth. You don't make
yeah,
fun of somebody who's got holes in their shoes. Like there's a certain unwritten ethics code that I think most people, certainly most adults, but most kids even know. Like, and then I hear shit like that and I'm like, that's shameful.
yeah. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, going back to the documentary, I mean, like, yeah, every time I watch it though, yeah, it's just entertaining as hell, man. Like, it's just like there's a certain energy to it. It's got some great editing to it, where
it does.
it cuts to whether it be still images or the interview or just clips. It's
Animation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a well crafted documentary. It's
It is.
entertaining and it keeps your attention. I mean, like hell, the thing was nominated for best picture, not best picture, best documentary for a reason. And hell, it is the documentary that got me interested in watching more documentaries. I mean, I know you have people who like they watch the ID channel, like you watch all the murder documentaries, but this was something that made me go, hey, that was kind of cool that we looked at something as big as McDonald's and we dissected it in all these different ways. And it made me want to go and pursue watching other documentaries down the line as a kid too, where I was like, hey, like if I saw them on Netflix, like the one funded by Chipotle, Food Inc., that was another one I was like, let me check that
Yeah.
out. I wish I knew about Super Size Me too, but it eventually got me to watch The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. Hell, it's what makes me pay attention to them for Sleepless with stuff like Class Action Park, the high
Movie
school,
pass movie crash
movie
next
pass,
week.
crash, which we're reviewing next week, and then what was the most recent one we reviewed? The high school footballers, BS
BS
High.
High.
Like it's just like it made me pay attention to those kind of releases because it's like we don't get them in theaters as much as we do, and as much as we like, I love something like Won't You Be My Neighbor. Documentaries in theaters they're far too very few, and they're mostly put on streaming now because streaming is just the more optimal place for it to get a lot of views. But
It's
I,
true.
I, I always thank Super Size Me for making me as interested as I am in documentaries.
And it's sad too. I mean, obviously, Spurlock deserves condemnation for the stuff he admitted
Yeah,
to doing. But the part of me that will always be shocked, and I mean, it's sad when a life is cut short at 53 years old because of
Shit,
cancer.
yeah.
It's sad in that respect. What I would love to know, though, are the movies, and I doubt it'll come out because he's been divorced 3 times. So I don't really know of anybody in his corner, and he left his production company and it folded.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. I think he probably internalized a lot of these. I don't think these will ever come out, but I would love to know. He feels like somebody I would have interviewed too, with the kind of people I get on the radio show. He feels like somebody I would have interviewed too, which bugs me because I've been thinking about this. Is like, what were the movies after he came out with that, and nobody would touch him? Nobody would touch him for a movie or anything like that. What, excuse me, what were the documentaries he wanted to make but
Yeah.
couldn't? What were the movies, or what were the projects he was planning on doing
And
after
with how
the sequel to
versatile he
Super
was,
Size
like
Me?
you're saying, who knows, man? He could
You
have
couldn't
done,
even guess.
he could have done something on theme parks. He could have done something on the NFL. We don't know.
Yeah, and like you talk about his documentary, like, basis. Like, you go to Michael Moore. Michael Moore is a political filmmaker. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
attacked the healthcare industry, the Bush administration, capitalism as a whole. He's got his lean. Most documentarians have their zone that they operate in. Once in a while, they might deviate. A lot of the 30 for 30 directors, too, like Ron Shelton, who
Yeah.
made Jordan Rides the Bus, was a sports movie director. Like, there's a lean that you have with documentary filmmakers. You never knew what the hell Morgan Spurlock was going to do.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me in some way. Is it's like, what were the movies that we're never going to get? What was he looking into, trying to maybe get made, or saying, I'll eventually make this? That's what's gonna, I think, bother me. That's what I think is one of the reasons his death impacted me so much, besides me being a fan, and besides Supersize Me being foundational in my love for documentaries from a young age. I think it's the fact that, like, you just never knew what he was gonna do.
Yeah.
And now he won't. And now it's done. It's just gone like that, out of thin air.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Because like you said, man, 53 is just too young. In general, I know we're butting up against time. The last thing I'll just say is, like, yeah, I was sad to see it, and you even saying, like, what would be next that he would do. I mean, you got to sit there and wonder, because it's like, yeah, the guy would almost tackle anything. We don't know, honestly. But at the end of the day, sad to see it go. Very complicated history of his life when you look back on it and everything. But still, 53, yeah, way too young.
Rest in peace to Morgan Spurlock. One final thing before we go about Spurlock, though, that I remember reading when it came out was, I remember, like, to sound like a hipster, I remember when the original Catfish documentary came out.
Oh, that's another one. That came out in theaters.
I remember when it premiered. And it premiered at a film festival, I think Tribeca.
Yeah.
And because I was following it at the time in high school, because I really wanted to watch it. And I remember Morgan Spurlock, after the movie, because this made headlines, Spurlock came up to Henry Joost, Ariel Schulman, and Nev Schulman, the 3 guys behind the Catfish documentary, later the MTV series. He came up to them and said, "Excellent job, guys. That was the best fake documentary I've ever seen."
Oh my god!
That just popped into my head. I remember reading that, and that was after I had seen it, though. I didn't see that initially, but it was a story back when that movie premiered.
Yeah.
And Nev Schulman missed a big opportunity to say, "Hey, pot, leave the kettle alone." And missed a bold opportunity. He definitely was the bigger man, but. We will quit here. Great show today. Really good show. Next week, we got a double feature on the show, because we're talking the new South Park special, The End of Obesity. Hopefully, Dominic will return for that one. We're talking South Park, The End of Obesity. And then we're also going to get into the new documentary on Max, which I believe is out today. It's called Movie Pass Movie Crash.
Yep.
And I think we're going to have a lot to say on that, mainly because we lived it and we were recipients. We were beneficiaries of Movie Pass.
This is going to be a unique documentary experience, because, like, while some of the other ones we reviewed, it's like, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Like, yeah, I used to watch that show every once in a while growing up. This is something I experienced from beginning to end, practically, where you and I covered it on OG Sleepless, and we went like, oh yeah, no, this thing's barely gonna, like, make any money and everything, to eventually becoming members, to eventually just talking about its downfall.
Yeah, I got a couple good Movie Pass stories I can't wait to share that I'm gonna leave for next week.
Honestly, I might make the intermission clip something Movie Pass related from back in the
I would
days.
appreciate that. I would appreciate that. I gotta tell the story of how and when I canceled it, and I gotta tell the story of what I did when they implemented the ticket the photo ticket confirmation.
Yeah.
I've got a couple stories to share with Movie Pass that I cannot wait to dive into. Because yeah, we were too young for Action Park and we wouldn't have lived on the East Coast anyway.
Yeah.
And then BS High, obviously we weren't involved. And I remember the story. I mean, we saw the story at like its apex on ESPN.
Yeah, we saw the infamous game that these kids played.
But that was it.
Yeah.
And then like you look at I'm trying to think of like another documentary, the Mr. Rogers one. Yeah, we watched, but we weren't like around during its boundary breaking heyday.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun to look at a documentary and be like, oh yeah, I remember this. Yep, now they're struggling. Now they implemented the photo ticket
I
thing.
guess Fire Festival. Fire Festival's one that, like, yeah, I mean, I was keeping up with.
Yeah, that was the one I was
Twitter.
trying to think of.
Yeah.
That was the Twitter thing. That whole weekend, I remember following the whole Firefest fiasco.
But I wasn't at Fire Festival. I was a part of this.
Yes, I have the fucking debit card to prove it. That is our show tonight, though. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And we will be back next week with reviews of South Park, The End of Obesity, and Movie Pass, Movie Crash next week here on Sleepless with Steve. For Joe Viso, the unseen but still loved Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.
But I have a hard day.